Armored Cannon Beetle. This is actually a fairly clever boss. He sucks, you shove, I'm gonna give him an A before I make this sound any worse than it does already. The Beady Longlegs is a boss that I think gets a bit more hate than they deserved. There is a distinct strategy and approach here that most people don't consider. Going in with a small group is vastly more beneficial here, so you can control your squad fairly easily and not cry. I feel like the strategy is the peak Pikmin gameplay they set out for when they made the game, so I'm giving it an S tier. The blue Pikmin are an absolute classic, and I'm not just saying that because they're the first Pikmin type on this list. I feel they are the one Pikmin type that has been strong in just about every game, with the only exception being Pikmin 3 underutilizing them a decent bit, mainly due to the fact that they are found so late into the game. There are water worlds, water caves, and they can also save Pikmin from drowning, meaning canonically they're the only Pikmin that has morals. S tier. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the bread bug, but I feel they technically serve a really strong purpose to the Pikmin gameplay loop, which is to scare you and make you anxious as they roam around the premises. Even to this day, I'm always shaking into my frickin' boots over these guys. Ugh. Still, this enemy was sort of ruined in Pikmin 2. You no longer need strategy to kill them. You can just spam your purple Pikmin and win. Now that can be applied to, every enemy in Pikmin 4, but I'll still give them a B. Bulby! Now, if this is your first time hearing about this character, you probably are not alone, unless you're a nerd like me. Bulby is Captain Olimar's dog, who we briefly see a drawing of with his family members in a journal entry. These family members went on to make sort of tangible appearances in the Pikmin 2 letters, but Bulby never came back because the developers hate puppies and ice cream and they have no human decency. I'm giving an S tier to pay my respects for Bulby. Now, with the burrowing Snagret, they aren't necessarily bad, but I really hate having to wait around for their heads to get buried in the ground. It can take a bit too long sometimes since this is RNG dependent, and you're like, how did I just lose a coin flip 5 times in a row? That's not statistically possible. B tier. Now, Captain Olimar, in my opinion, is one of the best Nintendo characters ever written, which might sound weird at a first glance. I mean, he's just a chummy little silly guy, but his journal entries in Pikmin 1 were really something impactful and meaningful, considering his stakes, and he's just ultimately a sort of relatable character. This was only developed further in Pikmin 4, as he sacrificed his own life to save his dog Moss. I mean, who does that? Probably a lot of dog owners, whatever. I will always be an eternal Captain Olimar fan, and I could prove it by showing off this piece of plastic. S tier. Dwarf Bulborb. I say this in every Pikmin video because I am a hack, but these really are the Goombas of the Pikmin franchise. They're a classic and always fun to smush. A tier. Dwarf Bulborb, same sort of thing, so also A. Emperor Bulblax. I know. How could a major boss in the Pikmin franchise be a D tier? JeffCompass, you suck! Well, in Pikmin 1, I find him very finicky to kill, and always lose Pikmin unfairly on this fight. And in 2 and 4, this enemy was just turned into a complete and utter prank. And yes, I called him an enemy and not a boss because he's basically an enemy now. I mean, there's never been a character with such a downfall. Look at this thing. Next up, we have what the game calls, it's not just me being toxic, the game calls this the female shear grub. They do not attack you and pose no real threat to the player. I don't know, you tried coming up with stuff to say about an enemy who doesn't even attack you. B tier. If you've ever visited the Forest Navel, you'll surely be familiar with the fiery blowhog. I actually feel these enemies require the player to be thinking very strategically here, as you can't leave your red Pikmin with them willy-nilly or they'll go for a murderous swim. They never really reach the highs of this in the later games, but I'll just give them an A for the execution in Pikmin 1. Gulix. Now, this is one of the 3 optional bosses in Pikmin 1. I do feel this boss is very well designed and looks kinda sick, though it being stuck to an optional fight and not yielding all that many good rewards kinda just puts this in C tier category. Next up, we have the Honey Wisps. Throw Pikmin, get drugs, and you make profit. B tier. Iridescent flint beetles. I don't know if this is a hot take. I don't know if anyone even has takes about these things in general, but these enemies just irritate me because your Pikmin will cling on to them, which really throws off your efficiency, and they don't yield that many good rewards, like, ooh, a 1 Pikmin pellet that also grow around me everywhere. C tier. While the female shear grubs aren't all that offensive, the male shear grubs do attack the Pikmin and Olimar, but just to be equal, I'll just put them in B tier here. Mamuta, another optional boss, meaning statistically, this is the first time someone has seen one of these things in their life. Well, I don't know, they kind of came back in Pikmin 2 and 4, and they were a lot more relevant there. I don't know, it's super hard to be mad at an enemy that does flower your Pikmin when it attacks them, although that does mean you have to sit there plucking for 5 hours after a fight. B tier. Pearly Clam Clam. Now I'm putting this in S. It's a downright perfect enemy for Pikmin. You have to really balance how many Pikmin you're throwing at the pearl before retreating. This is the quintessential Pikmin enemy, and I won't take any other excuses. The Puffman. Yeah, I don't know if this really counts as a character. It's more like a evil transformation, but this is what happens if the Puffstool's poison reaches your precious Pikmin, and that is just horrifying. But even though the Puffy Blowhog came back in Pikmin 4, these were never seen again. A tragedy. I can live with the B tier, I just hope you can. Then we have their toxic father, the Puffstool. It's a decent fight, it's a good Pikmin boss, and while we're on the Puffs, Puffy Blowhog, I hate this travesty. They're always placed just to make your life so miserable, and are always in super irritating spots. Gee, that's fair, C tier. Now we have the red Pikmin. It's tough to really choose a perfect ranking here. They're the Pikmin everyone thinks of when thinking of, well, Pikmin, shut up. They were phenomenal in 1, but through the rest of the series sort of lost their usefulness. Although they did regain it in 4 with the pine cone throwing mechanic. They're classics, and I'm gonna scrounge enough praise here just for an A tier. The Shearwig. Now, this enemy was coded purely to be annoying. These are sheer grubs that fly, and are always placed in the worst possible locations, like by the goddamn bridges. The game purposely programs you to hate them, so I guess I'm just gonna put them in D. Smoky Prog, the third of the optional bosses, and by far the hardest Pikmin enemy, possibly ever. Well, until that game. It's a classic and sort of a genius optional boss with a fantastic reward. Everyone, I think, has a really good memory of this, not in terms of playing the game, but in terms of trauma. S tier. Spotty Bulborb goes into A. I really love the strategizing these creatures require from the player. Gathering your squad, going in for the attack, it's just so gratifying. And I won't hold the crushing glitch against this enemy, since that is the developer's fault. Miyamoto personally coded that. Swooping Snitchbug. I hate this beast, and you do too. I'm gaslighting you and telling you that you do as well. It grabs your Pikmin and makes you pluck them after, becoming a massive time waster in a game that's already timed. I'm putting this in F tier because, again, the game is basically just encouraging you to hate them anyways. Water Dumples. Apparently these are relatives of the Bulborb. Sure, and I'm a relative of Moses. I can't defeat these damn fools in 1 without losing like 5 Pikmin, and they're just always in clusters. C tier. Yellow Pikmin. Their usefulness in the series, again, ranges from useless to downright goated. That's what hip people say, I think. They are immune to electricity, which was first introduced in 2, but the developers did get quite a bit of mileage for that. Besides that, they can be thrown higher from the others. Except for Pikmin 2, I think they're one of the more useless types throughout the series, so I'm just gonna give them a B tier. I'm sure I'm pissing off a lot of people, but when am I not, you know? The normal Wally Hop doesn't bother me too much. For the same logic as the Pearly Clam Clam, I feel like they make you time your throws very smartly. I'll give them an A, but the yellow Wally Hops really piss me off because they have such a stupidly high defense level for no reason, and fighting everyone honestly takes like a minute, so they get a C.